I used to think mopping floors was the lowest point of my life, that nothing could feel more humiliating than scrubbing coffee stains off a billionaire's marble tiles while he strutted around in $1,000 shoes. But that day, when he handed me that folded piece of paper with his usual smirk, I realized I was wrong. I had no idea it would change everything for him and for me. My name is Mary Carter. I'm 27 years old, and for the past 2 years, I've been working as a housekeeper in the kind of mansion most people only see in magazines. It wasn't supposed to be this way. When I graduated top of my class with a degree in linguistics and cultural anthropology, I thought my future was secure. I dreamed of traveling the world, decoding ancient scripts, and teaching at universities. But dreams don't pay rent in New York. The fellowship I was counting on fell through. The job interviews dried up, and after 6 months of eating ramen noodles in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew, I finally caved. I took a job cleaning for Alexander Grant. He's not just rich, he's obscenely rich. The kind of man who buys an entire vineyard on a whim because he didn't like the wine they served him on vacation. At 38, he's already built and sold 2 tech companies, bought half of Manhattan, and made himself one of the youngest billionaires in America. And he knows it. Alexander is charming in the way a wolf is charming. His smile is sharp. His words are sharper. He has a way of making everyone in the room feel 2 inches tall, including me. To him, I was invisible, just the girl in a faded blue uniform who showed up at 6 every morning and left before he even finished his second espresso. But that morning was different. When I walked into his office to dust the shelves, he was already there, leaning back in his leather chair, with a glass of scotch in hand, even though it was barely 10 a.m. On the desk in front of him was a stack of old yellowed papers. His laugh echoed through the room as he waved one of them in the air. "I'll give my entire fortune," he said, his voice dripping with amusement, "to anyone who can translate this." 5 men and women in expensive suits stood nervously in front of him. Linguists, translators, language, professors from Ivy League schools. And one by one they failed. I kept my head down, pretending not to listen, but my heart was pounding. I knew that script. William Hartman never walked into a room. He owned it the second he appeared. At 57, he had the air of a man who believed the world spun just for him. Maybe it did. He built his fortune from the ground up, then doubled it again. Now he sat behind a mahogany desk, big enough to land a helicopter on in a corner office, with windows that overlooked all of Manhattan. The sunlight streamed in through the glass, catching the gold accents in the room, the picture frames, the clock on the wall, even the pen he twirled between his fingers. I'd been in this office 100 times to dust the shelves, polish the wood, and sweep crumbs from the imported rugs. But I'd never been in it while he was here. This was his throne room. And William Hartman. He was every bit the king. His suit was flawless, tailored within an inch of its life. His cufflinks probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Silver hair combed back perfectly, not a strand out of place. And that smile, it wasn't kind. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like you just stepped into a trap you hadn't even realized was there. Across from him stood 5 people. I recognized a few of them from television. Dr. Rhodes, a linguistics professor at Columbia. Dr. Liu, an expert in ancient Asian dialects. There was even a guy who'd once been hailed as a translation prodigy on the cover of Time. Now they all looked like school children being scolded. On the desk in front of William was a folder stuffed with brittle yellow pages, each covered in strange symbols and faded ink. "Let me get this straight," William said, his voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. "I've flown in 5 of the most brilliant language experts in the country, and not one of you can read a single line of this." Dr. Rhodes adjusted his glasses nervously. "Mr. Hartman, these symbols don't correspond to any known script. It appears to be a hybrid, an amalgamation of several extinct languages. There are elements of Phoenician, but also." William raised a hand. "Stop." His smile widened. "You're telling me you charge universities $500,000 for your expertise, and you can't even tell me what this says?" No one spoke. "Interesting," William mused, leaning back in his chair. "What am I paying you for?" Then the room was silent, thick with tension, and then he laughed. It was a deep, rich sound, the kind of laugh that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "I'll make it fun," he said. "Here's the deal. Translate this document, and I'll give you everything. My entire fortune. All of it. But fail." He let the words hang in the air like smoke. "And you owe me $1 million each for wasting my time." One of the translators gasped softly. "I'm Mr. Hartman." "That's absurd," Dr. Liu stammered. "We don't." Absurd. William's smile never faltered. "What's absurd is that 5 of you can't solve a puzzle I'm handing to you on a silver platter." I froze, clutching my dust rag, praying he wouldn't notice me in the corner. But even as I tried to make myself invisible, I couldn't take my eyes off the document. The symbols swam in my mind like old memories. I knew them, and my stomach turned cold. Because the last thing I wanted was to draw his attention. "You heard me?" William said, his voice low but cutting like glass. "Translate this, and I'll give you every penny I own. $5 billion. No games, no loopholes. But if you can't..." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers, and that wolfish grin spread wider. "You owe me $1 million each. Consider it a fee for wasting my time." Dr. Rhodes's face turned pale. "Mr. Hartman, with respect, that's outrageous," he protested. "No one here agreed to such stakes." William arched a brow. "You all agreed to take my money for your so-called expertise, didn't you?" His words hung heavy in the air. A few of the translators shifted nervously, exchanging glances, but no one dared speak. It felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. I stood frozen near the corner of the room, clutching my cleaning rag so tightly, my knuckles turned white. My job was simple. Wipe down the baseboards, polish the brass handles, and never make eye contact with Mr. Hartman. But now, my eyes were glued to the ancient pages spread out on his desk, and my heart pounded in my ears. Those symbols, I hadn't seen them in years. But once you've studied something that rare, it stays in your mind forever. It wasn't just a language. It was a lost voice, a dying whisper from a people most of the world had long forgotten. Why did he have it? And what was he really trying to prove with this sick little game? William stood and began circling the group like a predator sizing up its prey. "Look at you," he said softly. 5 of the brightest minds in America, reduced to shaking in your $2,000 shoes. He stopped behind Dr. Liu. "I'm not asking for miracles, just words on a page. That's your job, isn't it? Or maybe I've been paying for smoke and mirrors all these years." No one dared answer. He chuckled, the sound deep and cold, pathetic. Then his eyes flicked past them, right to me. I froze. "Ah," he said, almost lazily. "And who's this?" "Another expert hiding in the shadows." My stomach dropped. "No, sir," I said quickly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just the housekeeper. I'll I'll leave now." But William raised a hand, stopping me in my tracks. "Not so fast." His sharp gaze swept over me like a scanner. "You've been standing there quietly this whole time." "What's your opinion?" I blinked. "My opinion?" "Yes." His lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Do you think you could do better than these so-called experts?" I felt every eye in the room turn to me. My throat went dry. I should have shaken my head. I should have laughed it off and walked away. But my fingers brushed the edge of my apron pocket, where an old pendant rested, a pendant etched with the same symbols as those pages. And for the first time in years, the words rose unbidden in my mind. "I asked you a question," William said. His voice was smooth, almost amused, but there was steel underneath. I froze where I stood, gripping my dust rag so tightly, it felt like it would tear in two. I'm just the housekeeper, sir," I stammered. "I don't know anything about—" "You were staring at the document." His eyes locked on mine, gray, cold, and impossibly sharp. "Were you not?" My throat tightened. I didn't mean to." "Then you've already broken the first rule of being invisible." A faint smirk tugged at his mouth. "Never let the king catch you watching." The 5 experts looked as stunned as I felt. One of them, Dr. Liu, gave me a pitying glance, like I was a deer about to be eaten alive. William leaned back in his chair, still holding my gaze. "Tell me, Mary." He rolled my name on his tongue like he'd just discovered it. "Do you speak any other languages?" "Spanish, French, maybe Pig Latin." A few nervous chuckles escaped from the translators, but they died quickly when William shot them a look. I swallowed hard. "Some Spanish, sir," I whispered. "Nothing special. Nothing special," he repeated, tilting his head. "Yet you were looking at this document like it wasn't complete gibberish." He tapped the stack of ancient pages with one manicured finger. "Come closer." My heart hammered in my chest. "Sir, I really shouldn't. That wasn't a request." His tone had dropped quiet, but lethal. I forced my legs to move each step, heavy as lead. When I reached his desk, the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle, filled my lungs. William picked up one of the pages and held it out to me. "Since you're so fascinated, why don't you give it a try?" The room went utterly silent. All 5 experts stared at me. The security guard by the door shifted uncomfortably. "Sir." "I can't." "Oh, I insist," William said smoothly. "Here's your chance to prove that even housekeepers can outshine professors." The smirk on his face deepened. "Or at least give me a laugh before lunch." I hesitated, staring at the page. The faded symbols danced in front of my eyes. For a moment, I felt like I was 21 again, sitting in a dusty university library, my fingers tracing similar patterns in an old manuscript. But that was a lifetime ago. Now, I wore a uniform with someone else's name stitched on the breast pocket. Now I was the help. And yet, the words were there, in my mind, waiting. I stared at the brittle page in William's hand like it was a live grenade. The faded ink, the strange symbols. It felt like the room was shrinking around me. My throat went dry. I really can't, sir," I whispered. My voice sounded small, pathetic even to my own ears. "I don't know these languages. I'm just a housekeeper." William's tone was deceptively soft, but there was something dangerous coiled underneath. "That's what you were about to say, wasn't it?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." He tilted his head, studying me, the way a hawk studies a mouse in the grass. "You know what I hate more than failure." "Mary," I shook my head. "Cowardice." The word hit me like a slap. I'm not... "Oh, you are," he said calmly. "I can see it in your eyes. That little flicker of recognition when you looked at the page. You know something, but you're too scared to open your mouth." Heat rose to my cheeks. "I'm not scared." "Then prove it." He stepped closer, holding the page out between two fingers like bait. "Read it." The 5 experts were still standing there, silent, watching. I could feel their disbelief pressing on me like a weight. "What is he doing?" their eyes seemed to say. "She's just a cleaner." But I couldn't look away from the page. The symbols blurred, then sharpened in my mind, like they'd been waiting all this time to be remembered. My lips parted slightly. Maybe I could know. I shook my head, forcing the thought away. "Sir, it's not appropriate. William chuckled. "This isn't a tea party, kid. This is my office. My rules." He took a step closer. "And this is an order." His voice dropped into a register that sent a shiver down my spine. "Try." I froze. If I obeyed and got it wrong, he'd humiliate me, maybe even fire me. But if I refused... Something told me William Hartman wasn't the kind of man you said no to. The page trembled slightly as he held it out. "Do it, Mary." The room felt suffocating. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them open. And then a single word rose in my mind. A sound from a language I hadn't spoken in years. The page felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of 1,000 eyes. I could feel them on me. The 5 experts, the security guard, even the secretary peeking nervously from the hall. They weren't just watching. They were waiting for me to fail. "She's just a cleaner," one of the translators whispered. I heard it. So did William. He didn't correct them. Instead, he smirked. "Go ahead, Miss Carter," he said. "Enlighten us." His voice dripped with amusement, as if he was already rehearsing the punchline to the joke he thought I'd become. My fingers tightened around the edge of the page. The parchment was delicate. The ink faded with time, but the shapes on it, they weren't foreign to me. Not completely. My palms were damp. My heart pounded like a drum in my throat. "Sir," I tried to protest one last time. This isn't what William interrupted, his tone sharp now. "You wanted to stay invisible. Too late for that." He leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. "Go on. Prove to all of us why you were better off scrubbing floors." A few of the translators smirked. I caught the glance between Dr. Rhodes and Dr. Liu. Equal parts pity and disdain. "She'll make a fool of herself," one of them murmured. I swallowed hard. Maybe they were right. I hadn't spoken this language in years. Not since... No. I pushed the memory down. Now wasn't the time to relive old wounds. Now was the time to survive. I closed my eyes for half a second, steadying my breath. The words were still there, waiting. When I opened my eyes, my hands were still trembling slightly, but my voice, when it came, was clear. The first word slipped out of my mouth like a whisper, soft, precise. The sound rolled off my tongue so naturally it startled even me. For a second, no one breathed. I didn't dare look up. My eyes stayed fixed on the faded symbols as the next words formed, uncoiling from some deep corner of memory. Inu wahe, tolvni hatso. 3 sentences, perfect pronunciation. The language of a people long silenced. The language my grandmother had taught me in hushed tones as a child, before she died, and took the rest of our tribe's stories with her. When I finally raised my eyes, the room had changed. The smirks were gone. Dr. Rhodes's jaw hung open slightly. Dr. Liu blinked like she was trying to decide if she'd imagined it. Even the security guard had stopped fidgeting. But William wasn't smiling anymore. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his desk, and his gray eyes pinned me in place. Again he said quietly. His voice had lost its mocking edge, this time louder. I hesitated. A moment ago, I would have done anything to melt back into the floor. But now, something in his tone made my pulse quicken. I read the 3 sentences again, louder this time. Each syllable rang clear, filling the room. Silence followed. A heavy, charged silence. For a moment there was nothing. No sound. No movement. Not even the faint hum of the air conditioner. It was as if the whole world had stopped turning. I could feel their eyes on me. The 5 experts stood frozen like statues in a museum. Dr. Rhodes's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Dr. Liu clutched the strap of her bag so tight her knuckles turned white. Hassan, the translator brought in for Middle Eastern scripts, shook his head slowly, whispering under his breath, "Impossible." Even the security guard had gone still. But the sharpest change was William. He didn't smirk. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. For the first time since I'd started working in this building, William Hartman looked human. His jaw was tight. His gray eyes locked on mine, no longer cold or mocking, but wide, with something I couldn't quite name. Shock. Confusion. Recognition. "You," he murmured finally, his voice low and strange. "You're not who I thought." My hands tightened on the parchment. "I told you," I said quietly. "You shouldn't have made me do this." He leaned back slightly, still staring at me. The room seemed to hold its breath. Dr. Petrova was the first to find her voice. That was Yuchi," she whispered hoarsely, "a Native American language extinct for decades." And her pronunciation. She turned to the others, her voice rising. It was flawless. Hassan nodded slowly. She spoke it like someone who's lived it, not learned it. Dr. Liu's brow furrowed, but how no one answered. Because there wasn't an answer. Not one that made sense. William finally stood. The movement felt loud in the silence. He came around the desk, each step deliberate, his polished shoes clicking on the marble floor. When he stopped a few feet in front of me, I felt small, smaller than ever. His gaze searched my face, as if he was trying to peel back every layer and see what was underneath. "Who are you, Mary?" he asked softly. There was no arrogance now, no taunting, just raw curiosity, and maybe a flicker of respect. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because if I told the truth, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the way the room had gone still. Maybe it was the look on William's face, no longer the predator circling prey, but a man caught off guard for the first time in years. Or maybe I was just tired of hiding. I raised my chin, slowly, deliberately. And for the first time since I'd started working in this skyscraper, I met William Hartman's eyes. They weren't cold anymore, not sharp like steel. Now they burned with questions, unspoken, heavy. I took a breath. "Do you want me?" I said quietly but clearly to translate the entire thing. The words landed like a hammer on marble. A ripple went through the room. Hassan inhaled sharply. Dr. Liu's hand shot to her mouth. Dr. Petrova whispered something in Russian that I couldn't catch. Even the security guard shifted uneasily, as if the air had grown thicker. William didn't move, didn't blink. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, but not in amusement, in disbelief. Finally he spoke. "You think you can?" His voice was low, rougher than before. Yes. The answer surprised even me. It came out steady, certain, like a truth I'd carried for years buried deep, waiting for this exact moment to break free. William studied me, not like an employee, not like a curiosity, but like an opponent he hadn't seen coming. "I've hired the best minds in the country," he said slowly. "They all failed. Every single one." "I'm not them," I replied. Silence. Heavy. Electric. His eyes narrowed slightly as if weighing me, testing me. And then, "That's a bold claim, Mary." "It's not a claim." I held his gaze. "It's a fact." Another ripple through the room. Dr. Rhodes let out a nervous laugh. "She's bluffing," he muttered under his breath. "This is ridiculous." William raised a hand, silencing him instantly. The room fell quiet again. "You realize," he said finally, his voice soft but sharp, "if you're wrong, there's no going back. I'm aware." My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice didn't waver. "Then prove it." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the entire stack of pages on his desk. "Translate it all." And just like that, the challenge shifted. It wasn't about money anymore, or power. It was about me, and whether I was ready to stop pretending to be invisible. I held the first page in my hands, fingers steady now. But my mind wasn't here. It drifted back 5 years to a different life. I was 22, a rising star in the world of linguistics. People used to say my brain was wired for language. I could pick up patterns, tones, syntax faster than most professors who'd been teaching for decades. By senior year, I was already tutoring graduate students. My name had been printed on 2 academic papers. There were talks of a Fulbright scholarship, Oxford, Harvard, Tokyo University. Doors were opening everywhere, and I was stupid enough to believe they'd stay open forever. It started with him, Ethan. He was charming older, a visiting professor with a smile that could disarm anyone. I thought I was special when he noticed me. I thought I was brilliant when he praised my work. But slowly, his compliments became criticisms. "You're too intense, Mary. No one likes a know-it-all. You're making me look bad in front of the department." By the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. He'd chipped away at my confidence, and when the plagiarism accusations came, I didn't even know how to fight. They said I copied his research. I whispered to no one, my eyes still on the ancient script in front of me. William didn't hear it. The room was silent, waiting. I kept my face neutral, but inside, the old shame burned. I hadn't copied anything. Ethan had taken my work, rewritten it just enough to publish under his name, and then fed the faculty stories about my mental instability. In 6 weeks, my reputation was gone. The scholarship offers disappeared. The conference invitations stopped. The university handed me a polite expulsion letter and a brochure for alternative career paths. I became invisible overnight. No one wanted a disgraced linguist. No one believed a 22-year-old woman over a respected 38-year-old academic with tenure. I moved cities, changed my phone number, took whatever job I could find to pay rent. First as a waitress, then as a hotel maid, and finally, here, cleaning the penthouse floors of one of the richest men in America. I exhaled slowly, shaking off the memory. That girl, the one with fire in her eyes and dreams too big for her own good, she died 5 years ago. What was left was someone quieter, smaller, someone who didn't make eye contact, someone who never let anyone see how much she still knew. But now now with William Hartman staring at me like I'd just flipped his world upside down. That girl was clawing her way back. I thought hitting rock bottom would feel like crashing, but it didn't. It felt like sinking. Slow, quiet. One day, you're a prodigy with the world at your feet. The next, you're folding hotel sheets in silence. After the scandal at university, I went home to Georgia. I thought maybe my family would believe me. I was wrong. My father didn't understand how a girl who spoke 7 languages could be so stupid about men. "Why would he steal your work?" he'd said, shaking his head. "You must have done something to upset him." My mother didn't say much, just wrung her hands and whispered, "Maybe it's time to be realistic, Mary." In my small hometown, people gossiped in church pews and grocery store aisles. That Carter girl was always too proud. She thought she was better than the rest of us. I couldn't stand the looks, the pity, the smugness. So I left. The New York wasn't kinder. It was colder, hungrier. People didn't ask about your dreams here. They asked if you had rent money. I waited tables until my feet bled. When the restaurant closed without paying us, I cleaned motel rooms for cash. The first time a guest left me a $5 tip with a note that said, "Thank you, Maria." I didn't bother correcting the name. I just pocketed the money and kept scrubbing. It wasn't supposed to be forever, just until I figured things out. But weeks turned to months. Months turned to years. And the longer I kept my head down, the harder it became to raise it again. At 27, I wasn't the girl professors had fought over in lecture halls. I was a ghost in a navy blue uniform, pushing a cleaning cart through penthouses I'd never afford. I looked at William Hartman now towering over me in his custom-tailored suit. The kind of man who wouldn't remember my name after I'd mopped his floors. If only he knew. If only any of them knew. And the parchment trembled slightly in my hands. Not from fear this time, but from something older, deeper. I wasn't just holding an ancient text. I was holding the last piece of myself I hadn't let the world take. His question hung in the air heavy, as the marble walls around us. Who are you? The same man who used to bark orders, without looking up from his phone, was staring straight into my eyes now, waiting. I should have looked away, kept my head down. That's what I'd done for 3 years, pushing my cart through his penthouse, polishing the windows that framed his empire, emptying trash cans filled with contracts and stock reports worth more than I'd make in a lifetime. And every time I passed his desk, he never looked, not once. To him, I was air, furniture, a pair of gloved hands that didn't have thoughts or dreams, or a name worth remembering. I took a slow breath and raised my chin. "I'm just the girl you never noticed," I said softly. His brow furrowed. I could feel the room shift. The translator stiffened. The secretary stopped breathing. Even the security guard leaned forward slightly. Even though my voice steadied. "I've been here for 3 years. Something flickered in William's eyes, and his recognition regret. Number men like him didn't feel regret, but for the first time, the mask cracked. "You?" he murmured. "You've been here all this time." "Yes." 3 years." "Yes." His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but no words came out, I let the silence stretch. Let him sit with the weight of it. The realization that a woman he'd dismissed as invisible was now holding the key to something he couldn't by bully or understand. "Do you know," I said quietly, "how many times I've cleaned this desk?" He didn't answer. "Or how many times I've picked up papers you left scattered across the floor?" Still nothing. 3 years. "Mr. Hartman, I've been walking these halls for 3 years, and you never once saw me." For a long moment, the only sound was the faint tick of the gold clock on his shelf. Then, "Why now?" he asked finally. "Why speak up now?" I looked down at the parchment in my hands, the ancient script that had brought us to this moment. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Because I'm tired of being invisible. For the first time since I'd known him, William Hartman didn't look like a man in control. He stood there, his hand resting on the edge of his desk, as if he needed it to steady himself. The room was quiet. The translators shifted uncomfortably. No one dared speak. Finally, he took a breath and asked the question I'd been dreading. "Where did you learn this?" His voice wasn't sharp now, not mocking, not commanding, just low, measured. "Where did you learn to read this language?" My fingers tightened around the parchment. I could have lied. I could have said I'd picked it up on YouTube, or in some night class, or from a tourist guidebook. But lies weren't enough anymore. "From my grandmother," I said softly. His brow furrowed. "She taught you this. She taught me more than this." I met his gaze. "She taught me that words are more than ink on paper. They carry entire worlds." He looked away for a moment, his jaw tightening, and yet he said finally, "You're here, cleaning floors." His words weren't cruel, not anymore, but they still stung. "Why, Mary?" His eyes locked on mine. "You could be anywhere. Why are you here?" I hesitated, because the truth was too big, too raw, because saying it out loud would mean admitting how far I'd fallen. "Just that life doesn't always care about what we're good at," I said quietly. "Sometimes it just asks what we can survive." His expression shifted. Something softened in his face. It wasn't pity. It wasn't guilt. It was something harder to name. "You've been hiding," he said slowly. I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. 3 years, he murmured. "All this time you've been here, invisible, and I never saw you." There was no anger in his tone, no arrogance, just the sound of a man confronting a truth he didn't like. For years I'd kept my head down, biting my tongue, smiling politely when people assumed I was simple because of the uniform I wore. But something about standing here, parchment in hand, his eyes locked on mine, changed everything. William Hartman wasn't laughing anymore. His lips were pressed into a tight line, not in anger, in thought. "Tell me," he said quietly, "how does someone like you end up here?" I could hear it, that faint note in his voice, the disbelief, the old arrogance trying to peek through the cracks. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Because the world doesn't measure worth the way you do, I said softly. His brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I took a step forward, felt the weight of 3 years of silence lift from my shoulders. It means not everyone holding a mop is a failure, I said, my voice steady. And not everyone holding a fortune deserves respect. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The translators exchanged glances. Even the secretary shifted uncomfortably in her seat. But William, he didn't move, didn't even blink. You're saying I don't deserve respect, he asked finally, his tone low. I'm saying respect isn't tied to money. I tightened my grip on the parchment. It's tied to how you see people, how you treat them. His jaw tightened. Go on. And for 3 years I've been invisible to you, I said. You never asked my name, never looked twice. And yet today, you're staring at me like I'm a different species, because I can do something you can't. Then that's not, I raised a hand. Let me finish. You treat wealth like a crown, Mr. Hartman, like it makes you bigger, smarter, better. I took a slow breath. But money is just numbers. It doesn't make you kind. It doesn't make you wise. It doesn't make you human. The room was silent. I could feel everyone watching, waiting for him to explode, but he didn't. Why didn't you say this before he asked, finally? His voice wasn't sharp now. It was quiet. Because I knew men like you don't listen, I said simply. Not until someone speaks your language. The first syllable rolled off my tongue, like it had never left. The second followed smooth, precise. And then the room began to fade away. It was just me and the words. Old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. The characters on the parchment came alive in my mind. I read in Yuchi first soft lyrical tones that filled the marble office like a forgotten melody. Then Arabic. Then Sanskrit. Guess I didn't rush. Didn't stumble. Each word carried weight history power. By the time I shifted into Mandarin, I heard it. A soft intake of breath. One of the translators, Dr. Chen, had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. She's flawless, someone whispered. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then I caught the voice. Dr. Martinez, the man who'd mocked me earlier, leaning toward his colleague. She's a linguistic prodigy, he murmured almost in awe, and none of us are even close to her. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they flattered me, but because they reminded me of a time when people used to say things like that all the time, before I became invisible. I kept reading, Persian now, then Hebrew. The languages flowed like rivers converging into one ocean. I didn't even need to think. The knowledge had never left me. It had only been waiting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw William. He wasn't leaning back smugly in his chair anymore. He wasn't smirking. He was still, too still. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white, his jaw tight. But his eyes followed every movement of my lips, like he was watching a miracle or a threat. For years, he'd surrounded himself with people who worshipped his money, his power, his brilliance, and now he was standing in front of a woman in a maid's uniform, realizing she had something he could never buy. "You're extraordinary," Dr. Petrova whispered under her breath. Her voice cracked, almost reverent. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The parchment spoke for me. For the first time in 3 years, the office was silent. No ringing phones, no clicking keyboards, no William Hartman barking orders, just stillness. He sat there unmoving, as if the leather chair had swallowed him whole. The same man who laughed at Ivy League professors 5 minutes ago now stared at his polished marble desk like it was a stranger. His lips parted slightly, not to smirk, not to deliver some cutting remark, but to whisper almost to himself, Was I wrong? I watched him closely. His hands, always precise, always confident, were clasped too tightly now, the knuckles white, the veins visible, like he was holding on to something slipping through his fingers. For years, this office was his kingdom. He spoke. People obeyed. He laughed. Others faked laughter too. But now even his voice felt smaller. "But was I wrong about all of this?" he murmured again. His eyes flicked up, catching mine. There it was, the first crack in the crown. "You mean about me?" I asked softly. "No." His voice broke slightly. "About everything." He leaned back, exhaling sharply. "I built all of this." His hand gestured vaguely to the room. The buildings, the money, the power. I told myself it meant I was smarter, better. His brow furrowed. But now, I can't even read a piece of paper without feeling small. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Sometimes silence says more than words. "You've been here this whole time." He shook his head almost in disbelief. 3 years. And I didn't see you. How many others have I ignored? How many others have gifts I'll never understand? The translators stayed quiet, their faces pale. This wasn't the man they knew either. The powerful, untouchable William Hartman was gone. In his place sat a man unraveling. "Maybe I've been wrong about people," he said finally. "Maybe I've been wrong about myself." For the first time in my life, I felt not powerful, not superior, but seen, truly seen. The parchment felt lighter in my hands now. Or maybe I'd grown stronger. Either way, as I neared the last lines, the air in the room shifted. The translators leaned forward. The secretary froze mid-breath. And William Hartman, he didn't move, didn't blink, like he already knew these final words weren't for the ancient kings who wrote them, but for him. I took a slow breath and read aloud. who believes power is eternal. My voice echoed in the cavernous office. The marble walls seemed to hold on to every syllable. Tias will be drowned by the very power he worships. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. William's fingers twitched on the armrest of his chair, as if the words had struck him physically. "And does know, that's what it says," he whispered. "And yes. Needs power." He repeated the word like it tasted different now. "Will drown me, I see." I met his eyes. "The text doesn't warn only kings," I said quietly. "It warns anyone who mistakes power for permanence. Anyone who builds their life on control and forgets how fragile it really is." His lips parted, but no sound came out. Because what could a man like William say to that? Yet for years, he'd used his empire as armor, a fortress of wealth, a crown of arrogance. But the words on that page had slipped past it all. "Why? Why are you here?" he asked, finally, his voice low. "You could be teaching at Harvard, running the United Nations. Anything." I smiled faintly, because not everyone with knowledge gets the chance to use it. He flinched, as if the truth burned. "He who believes power is eternal." The line replayed in his mind. I could see it in his eyes. Every insult, every employee he'd humiliated, every bridge he'd burned. And for the first time, William Hartman didn't look like a billionaire. Didn't look like a king. He looked human. The silence felt heavier than any words. William Hartman sat hunched forward now. His hands, those same hands that signed billion-dollar deals, that waved away the lives of employees like they were dust, were trembling. He swallowed hard. "I don't even know who I've been all these years." The room stayed still. The translators didn't dare move. I didn't either. Because this wasn't about me. This was about a man finally hearing himself for the first time. "I built everything on fear," he said quietly. "Made people afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of speaking up, afraid of me." He looked down at his perfectly polished shoes. Maybe I thought if they feared me, it meant they respected me. His voice cracked. But now, hearing those words, He shook his head slowly. "I'm starting to think I've been the one who was afraid all along." I said nothing, because sometimes the hardest truths can only come from within. William's eyes lifted to meet mine. They weren't sharp anymore, weren't cold. They were searching. "Diasnia." "Mary," he said softly. His voice, once so full of power, sounded small, fragile. "Do you think a man like me can change Indahit?" The question hung in the air, thick, raw, painfully honest. I didn't answer right away, because change isn't a promise you hand to someone. It's a choice they make. I don't know, I said finally. And he flinched. The truth stung more than any comforting lie. Tofrukon. But here's what I do know. I let the words hang just long enough to make him hold his breath. Change isn't about what you say in this office. It's about what you do when no one's watching. William closed his eyes, like the weight of my words had knocked the air from his chest. Do you believe in redemption? He whispered. And I studied him, the man who once believed money could buy anything. And for the first time, I didn't see a billionaire. I saw a man standing at the edge of a cliff. The words came out shaky, like they weren't used to leaving his lips. Mary. He cleared his throat, but his voice was still low. Raw. I need your help. So I blinked. Help. Yes. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke again, it was slower, deliberate. Teach me, he said. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him, but no, the billionaire who'd spent years thinking he was untouchable was asking me, the maid he never noticed, to teach him how to be. What? A better boss, a better man. Teach you what exactly, I asked carefully. And his eyes didn't waver. Teach me how to be human again. The room seemed to shrink around us, the translators still too stunned to leave exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even the secretary dropped her pen. You want me to teach you? Yes, his voice cracked, because somewhere along the way, I forgot what it means to see people as people. I crossed my arms. You really think this is something you can learn in a day? He shook his head. I know it won't be easy, and I know I've hurt people, destroyed them, even because I didn't care to understand. But I can't keep living like this, he said. Not after today. Silence settled in again. Once, I might have felt vindicated seeing him like this, but standing there, I realized this wasn't about revenge. This was about choice. His and mine. Why me? I asked finally. There are experts you could hire. Therapists, coaches, professors. And because none of them saw me for what I am, he said. His eyes softened. But you saw straight through me. You weren't afraid to tell me the truth I've avoided for decades. I held his gaze. Me, the girl in the Navy uniform, the one he'd overlooked for 3 years, and now he was asking me to show him how to build a life that wasn't built on fear. I didn't answer him right away, because this wasn't something I could take lightly. For 3 years, I'd watched William Hartman treat people like tools. To him, every interaction was a transaction. Every kindness came with a price. Every conversation was a game of control. And now, he was asking me to teach him how to be human again. Fine. My voice was calm, but the room seemed to tighten around us. You want my help. Desperately, he admitted. But then there are rules. He straightened in his chair, tension flashing in his jaw, but he didn't interrupt. Good. This time he'd listen. Rule number 1, I said slowly. You will change how you treat people, not just the people with degrees, titles, or power. Everyone. His brows furrowed slightly. I understand. I pressed. Because I've seen how you look at the janitors, the receptionists, the assistants who make your life run, like they're invisible. He flinched. You can't build a real life on the backs of people you don't even see. He nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Rule number 2, I continued. You are not allowed to use any knowledge you gain from me to manipulate others. He blinked. Manipulate. Yes. My voice sharpened. You've spent your life learning people's weaknesses and twisting them for your benefit. If you're serious about changing, that ends here. For the first time, he looked genuinely wounded, like the truth cut deeper than any insult ever could. Do you think so little of me? He asked quietly. I didn't hesitate. I think you've spent so long playing king that you've forgotten what it means to be decent. His shoulders sagged, and that more than anything told me he understood. Rule number 3, I said finally. This isn't about appearances. You won't get applause for trying, and you won't get credit for failing. The only reward is becoming the kind of man who doesn't need people to fear him. William's mouth opened, but he stopped himself. For once, the billionaire had no clever retort. Do you accept? I asked. He nodded slowly. I accept. William drew in a long breath, and for the first time since I'd met him, it didn't sound calculated. It wasn't the inhale of a man preparing to dominate a room. It was shaky, almost human. I will do it, he said. His voice was rough, like the words weren't used to forming in his mouth. I'll follow your rules. I'll change how I treat people. He paused, staring down at his trembling hands. And this time, he exhaled hard. This time, I'm not lying. Not to you. Not to them. Not even to myself. I studied him carefully. William Hartman had lied to thousands of people in his life. Employees. Business partners. Even I imagined himself. But this didn't feel like another performance. Then why should I believe you? I asked quietly. He looked up. His eyes, those cold, sharp eyes that once scanned people like ledgers, were different now. Softer. Because I've been lying so long, he said, his voice breaking. I don't even remember what the truth feels like. A heavy silence settled between us. The translators shifted awkwardly in their seats. Even they knew this wasn't the same man who had mocked them an hour ago. William's fingers clenched into fists. "I can't undo what I've done," he whispered, "but I can try to be someone better. Someone worthy." This us. Worthy of what I asked. "Worthy of respect," he said. "Not the kind I've bought with fear. The kind people give freely, because they see I've changed." His voice dropped lower. "And maybe worthy of forgiving myself someday." I didn't reply immediately. Part of me wanted to trust him, but another part, the part that had spent years watching his cruelty, wasn't ready yet. "Words are easy," I said softly. "Show me with your actions." He nodded. "Then actions you'll get. 6 months. It's strange how much a person can change in half a year, and yet watching William Hartman now, I could hardly recognize the man he used to be. Akasakatus." He walked slowly through the open office floor, stopping to shake hands to ask about kids to remember names. Not just the names of senior managers, but names like Carlos from maintenance, or Janet from the mailroom, or Lila the barista, who once cried in the stockroom after he'd berated her for getting his order wrong. "Morning, Lila," he said warmly. "Your latte art's famous around here now. You know, Sa'as." She blinked, then smiled shyly. "Thank you, Mr. Hartman. They call me William." I trailed behind him unseen, watching this quiet transformation unfold. 6 months ago, this man didn't know half these people existed. Now he stopped to listen to their stories. Real stories. Stories he used to dismiss as unimportant. After the first month of working together, I'd given him a challenge. Find the people you've overlooked. Learn their names. Learn their lives. I didn't think he'd take it seriously. But he had. And then, he'd gone further. William didn't just change how he treated people inside these walls. He started looking beyond them. 3 months in, he'd founded the Hartman Foundation, a fund to support immigrants' low-income workers and anyone trying to rebuild their lives. He called it his atonement. Now standing at the foundation's headquarters, I watched him hand over the first scholarship to a young woman from Honduras. She had tears in her eyes as she whispered, "This will change everything for my family." And William's reply, "Then, it's changing everything for me too." There was no trace of the smug billionaire in his voice anymore, just quiet sincerity. People didn't look at him with fear now. They looked at him with something rarer, respect. When William walked into his office that morning, he noticed something different. The air felt still. Too still. "Mary," he called softly. No answer. Her cleaning cart was gone. The faint scent of lemon polish lingered, but there was no trace of her. On his desk sat a single folded note. His name was written across it in neat, careful letters. Hands trembling slightly, he opened it. "William, you don't need me anymore. 6 months ago, you were blind to the world around you, to the people who served your coffee, cleaned your floors, typed your memos. You didn't see them, not really. But now, you do. He swallowed hard, his chest tightening. You've learned how to look someone in the eyes and see their story, not just their utility. You've learned that power means nothing if it's not used to lift others up. You've learned how to listen. My work here is done. His vision blurred as he read the last lines. This isn't the end, William. It's your beginning. I hope you'll keep walking this path. Not because I'm watching, but because you finally learned to see yourself too. Mary. The note slipped from his fingers onto the polished desk. He sat down heavily in his chair, staring out at the city skyline. For years that view had been his kingdom. Now it looked different. Larger. More alive. She was right. He didn't need her to hold the mirror up anymore. Because for the first time he could see. The office felt impossibly quiet. For years, this room had been filled with the sound of William Hartman's voice, barking orders, laughing cruelly, cutting people down with a single glance. Now there was only silence. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the city he once believed he owned. Cars crawled along the streets like rivers of light. So many people moving, living, dreaming. And for the first time in decades, he didn't see them as ants. He saw them as souls. In his mind, her voice echoed, "You don't need me anymore." It was true. Mary had left, but she hadn't left him empty. She had left him with eyes that could finally see. His reflection in the glass caught his attention. For years he had admired that image, tailored suit, expensive watch, perfect posture. Now he saw something else. A man who had spent half his life building walls so high he couldn't see over them. A man who had finally torn those walls down. He pressed his palm to the cold glass. "I used to think wealth was numbers on a screen," he murmured. "Power, ownership, winning at all costs." His throat tightened. "But now I know. You are only truly wealthy when you see the value in those you once looked down on. The janitor who sweeps your floors, the barista who gets your name wrong, the single mother working 2 jobs to survive, the immigrant you never bothered to notice. They are not beneath you. They were never beneath you." William's eyes glistened. He let out a long, shuddering breath. And the day you understand that is the day you stop being poor. He turned away from the window. For the first time in his life, William Hartman didn't feel like the richest man in the city. He felt like the richest man in the world.